I'm Ryan Daws, editor of IoT News, and today we have Rue Roberts with us, the UK country head of Waze. So Rue, can you just give us a quick brief of what you do at Waze?
Thanks, Ryan. So I'm the country manager, which essentially means I oversee our commercial operations, looking after our advertising platform in the UK, and working closely with our communication part of the business, so marketing efforts and so on. And I really, I guess I'm responsible for two things, which is our revenue and our user growth in the UK market.
I, like many people, probably remember the early days of Waze when you had full screen ads and messages from other users popping up. Waze has, of course, improved a lot since then, but how do you ensure that ads aren't distracting?
As you can imagine, for a proposition that is directly related to people on the road and driving, safety is paramount to that. We feel that the ad platform serves very simple ad units, which are about as native as you can get. So pins and arrows on the map it's expected by a user when they're using a map of any sort or a navigation proposition to see locations marked on that map. So whether you see a McDonald's sign or a Tesco badge or something, something like this on the map, it's expected and it's adding direct value. The fact that you can kind of represent an offer locally at one of those business types is adding value to the user as well. And then the takeovers you talk about, we reference them as zero speed takeovers, so they can only appear when the car comes to a complete stop and has been immobile for 4 seconds or more, ensuring that we're not distracting the driver at a critical moment on their drive.
So, like I said, in terms of giving value to both drivers and advertisers, how are you personalizing offers? And how do you ensure those ads are kind of useful and interesting to each driver's kind of unique tastes and preferences?
So I think in this age of digital marketing, where there is so much change and conversation about personalization, and what with new added elements of GDPR and these changes over the last 2 to 3 years taking effect, and the future of a cookieless world as well, is really important that we can offer contextual value to drivers without imposing on their privacy, essentially. So we use location-based information. Everybody that's using Waze we know exactly where their location is. That's how the sort of proposition works, of course. And so we're able to raise business and advertisers relevant to that location, relevant to that time of day. So it's, in simple terms, geo-targeting, time of day targeting, so that if you're driving from point A to point B and it's during the lunch hour, it makes perfect sense for a lunch type offer from QSR advertiser or from a retailer to be present at that time of day with contextual limit. And it doesn't matter whether you're a new driver of 18 or a senior driver of 60 plus, you still want to have lunch. So actually in effect creating a contextual targeting without invading too much on the actual individual person in that vehicle.
You've been doing a lot of tie-ups with brands and events. A personal favorite recently was your Halo Infinite branding. So I guess you've been doing something around the Rugby Six Nations, is that right?
So we do a number of things with whether it be events or particular profiles and so on. So you're right to mention the Halo example. That's part of our co-pilot program, which allows us to really give a sort of a fun element to the drive without detracting from the drive itself. So with the Halo voices available, you're still getting navigation turn-by-turn directions as explicit as they need to be, so that people can navigate from A to B, but offering the people in the vehicle a kind of a fun, slightly different engagement for the journey. But we offer that directly to advertisers as well. So that is a kind of an advertising proposition where you can change the vehicle or change the navigation voice to something particular. And we've done that with a number of partners. So from a sporting context, you're right, we've done that. We've got a program in place in the US with one of the NFL football teams. We did an event program with Roma Football Club in Italy a couple of years ago as the official navigation partner, sort of in place using our events program, which allows users to have very clear navigation to the correct car park at the right time of day, ensuring they arrive on time using our real-time data, of course, to do that. But it also means that those moments, whether it's a sporting fixture in at a certain time of day where we know there's going to be a lot of traffic coming into a certain area, for those that don't want to be involved in that, that is pre-baked into our map, so that the navigations are giving a wider berth, if you like, to that area as well. So it really helps both visitors and those that want to avoid those congested moments. So for the Six Nations, knowing that there are these matches that are happening throughout the UK and the cities in Europe taking part, there'll be those that, of course, are driving to those matches, and those that live in and around those areas that want to avoid the tumult of traffic. And so actually it would be through our Ways for Cities program, working with the local authorities in these areas, that we get the information in advance to understand when and where these kind of sporting events, and it also works for other types of events as well, are in place. And we, our map editor community, then kind of pre-bake those times of days into the map experience, and our algorithm takes care of the rest for those sort of high traffic moments.
Yeah, you mentioned that initiative there, and it seems a good point to sort of step away from advertising and talk about Waze as a platform more generally. In the US, Waze is giving anonymized data about its users to local governments in cities like in Nevada, Florida, and California, so that they can sort of plan infrastructure and help with managing traffic. Are you doing sort of similar initiatives in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. So the overarching name of that program is Ways for Cities, and you're right. It's a free exchange of information. So Waze offers access to local authorities, highways agencies, and the like, to be able to make smart decisions about their infrastructure and mobility around sort of urban areas in particular. And that can be anything from, introducing one-way systems, cycle lanes, ensuring refuse collection routes are as sort of not disrupting the regular flow of traffic as possible, because we know that those are pain points if you're sort of driving behind a refuse collection and that delays you by several minutes. But to be able to make really smart decisions, we provide them with street level data in real time, so that they can monitor the volume, speed, flow of traffic in their local areas. In return, they provide us with access to, plans for roadworks, events, whether that's sporting, music, festivals, street markets, think London Marathon or the Great North Run, or a Pride Parade, any of these types of events that is going to close down streets, disrupt traffic. They provide us with all of that information in advance, so that we can, as stated before, have that written into our map experience, so that at those times, on those days, the navigations work as effectively as possible.
It is very much a two-way street. So what kind of new data sources do you foresee emerging in the coming years from connected vehicles and roadside infrastructure?
So I think, one of the biggest challenges that we hear about, if we're thinking about our Ways for Cities program, local authorities care very deeply about parking. One of the biggest issues creating traffic in urban areas are cars looking for parking spaces. So I think the technology that will help highlight where there is availability, you imagine at the moment you drive past the entrance of a car park and it might say spaces available, and it might even say how many spaces are available, so you can confidently drive in. But having that information in advance of arriving at the car park, and having those kind of data sources baked into navigation propositions like Waze, so that when you're searching for a car park in the first place, it takes you straight immediately to one where there's availability. And then further to that, of course, in certain boroughs and certain areas, street side parking, and electric vehicle charge point accessibility, all of which are in a myriad of types of location these days and growing fast. It is explicitly important for helping solve for traffic, which is our core proposition. That's our sort of our raison d'etre, if you like. So I think that there's still these fundamental mobility challenges that local authorities and city bodies have, that the development of connected vehicle information and data driven decision making can be like really, really useful for.
So Google obviously acquired Waze in 2013, which must have given you sort of a lot of resources. I believe you're still running somewhat independently. But Google Maps, of course, been adding a lot of similar features to Google Maps. So you've probably been asked this a lot. Is there not a danger where Google would just kind of decide to just focus and pull its whole kind of company's talent under the one app instead?
It's certainly a question that is raised a lot in terms of what is the relationship between Google Maps and Waze, and why sitting under the sort of the same umbrella company. What I can say is the reasons the two exist are very different. You know, Google Maps really is all about finding places on the map, understanding where something is, so that you can get to it. Whereas Waze's proposition is really today about cars and vehicles on the road, and it's specifically about tackling that challenge of traffic. Because of that, we are a combination of tech-driven or data-driven solution. So the algorithm is all about cars on the road, understanding the speed of traffic and mobility in the moment, in real time. But we have the addition of user contributed information, flagging potholes, flagging road closures, sort of flagging certain issues on the road, which help other drivers immediately on their journey. So the cars behind you are benefiting from the information that your driver is creating. We have a universe of hundreds of thousands of map editors, volunteers helping us keep our map fresh, which work very closely with our Ways for Cities program, with the events program, and various other contributions. So that combination of tech, you know, data-driven solutions, but also the human element, we believe gives us that sort of additional edge of freshness in the map, which I don't think Google can ignore. Their proposition, whilst has similar features, is fundamentally different in its makeup. And when you look at different markets where we are, you know, Waze is the market leader, and in markets like the UK, where Google Maps and Waze are number 1 and 2 in terms of market share of use for navigation, certainly there's room for both. People's desires to use both are markedly different at times.
So how much data is actually being shared between Waze and Google Maps? And is that happening sort of near real time or periodically?
The Waze map and the information that we have is an independent proposition, just as Google Maps is an independent proposition. But like any third party business, we have certain access to, you know, data flow between the two orgs, in much the same way as another organization can access the Google Maps API or what have you. So from that point of view, we are everything that we do that Waze uses is as immediate as it can be. So we're refreshing the map throughout the day to have as real-time information as is possible. I can't comment on the frequency of Google Maps data refreshes, so I'm not entirely sure on that. But yeah, we refresh. So we do access elements of that data, but predominantly have our, of course, have our own first-party data source through people driving on the road, but then also the contributions from our partnerships.
As driverless vehicles obviously come onto our streets, we're talking sort of quite far ahead now. It's hard to imagine automotive companies enabling third-party apps for driverless navigation, especially since they'll be taking on, by looks of it, the insurance responsibility. So looking in the quite far future, what is the plan for Waze in a driverless vehicle world?
So we don't have a sort of specific roadmap related to driverless cars versus cars with drivers in them. What we monitor and care deeply about is, is a sort of eradicating the congestion element. I think it's fairly clear that if you had a future world of predominantly driverless cars, the Internet of Things, that kind of all vehicles knowing exactly where all vehicles are and the speed they're coming and when they're approaching each other, etc., takes giant leaps towards solving that problem as well. But in the short, medium, and long term, we certainly see that traffic is not an issue that disappears overnight, and so that problem continues to need to be solved. And we just think that Waze's core value proposition is one instrument that deeply has a positive impact on that challenge. And I think the driverless car world has to develop a long way for us to kind of see that shift.
So bringing things back into the much nearer term, what will Waze be focusing on in 2022?
We want to make sure our core value proposition is well known throughout the UK in particular. We are always looking at the ways that the product can develop and adding sort of benefits, whether through our community program. So our differentiator really is the community aspect. It's what users can do to ensure they are benefiting and helping others on the road. So we'll continue to drive examples of that. For example, the fuel crisis during last year, in Waze, we quickly enabled drivers to alert other drivers whether fuel was or was not available in certain fuel stations, and that drove a huge amount of usage in a short period of time, because it's just genuinely adding benefit to drivers in a time of crisis or in a time of personal need for other users on the road. So we'll continue to keep our eye open on ways that we can be beneficial for issues such as that. But we're also always looking to see how our data can be of use to solve local urban challenges for local authorities. So, we work with a number of partners throughout the UK, National Highways, Transport for London, the Department for Transport, and a myriad of local authorities across the UK. We welcome any additional partners because we think our data exchange, being free essentially is an easy decision to make, and we have a team there to support how that data can be used for decision making. And then fundamentally, we can't forget that our single revenue stream is through our advertising platform. So we're constantly looking at ways to improve and offer like ad units that are beneficial to advertisers whilst not contradicting our kind of core proposition. So not distracting drivers, but adding value to drivers on their routes in as native a form as possible. And we think we do a pretty good job of doing that.
Yeah, that fuel shortage feature I found very useful. So you have my personal heartfelt thanks for that one. I'm aware that we're running over our time. I was going to ask you to do your killer Freddie Mercury impression that I've been told about, but I'll let you off the hook this time, and hopefully we'll save that for the next one.